While my phone is doing this, just a real quick side note. Like, do y'all ever get the thing where the keyboard shows up on your lock page? I don't know what's going on. But anyways, man, we're here today. We're live, one day out from the creator mock draft. So I'm fired up. I'm fired up about this. And today's just gonna kind of be a walkthrough. Not really a walkthrough. I don't know what I want to call this. I also don't want to I don't know exactly what we're gonna do today, but we're gonna do it. Okay, that's what's gonna happen. We're gonna talk about this NFL draft, regardless of how we do it. We're gonna talk about it a little bit, and this is a preparation show essentially for tomorrow's creator mock draft. But I guess in my little world here, it's like the NFL draft. Like even though it's one round, which kind of throws it off a little bit, but it's kind of like, hey, the real NFL draft is happening a week from now, but my NFL draft is happening tomorrow. At least the first round. Tomorrow's day one, so that's what today's about, is kind of getting prepared for a massive day tomorrow. Now, there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but they fit in together. It's not just, hey, here's the creator mock draft. What I say for that doesn't apply to what the Lions will actually do in the draft, or what they could do in the draft, what they should do in the draft. Like, all these things can kind of overlap, and there's a lot going on. I would say there's a pretty good amount going on, specifically behind the scenes, when you look at like trades, trying to get a trade done. I've been in discussion with multiple teams. Some teams just haven't hit me back. Some teams just are, they're just like, not going to respond. And like, hey, look, man, I don't know what that, maybe they're waiting. They're trying to see like if I'll throw them more. Maybe they're just like, yo, we don't care, dog. Maybe they, you know what I mean? They have their silence, their phone silence. I don't know what's going on. But I've had some, I think, strong conversations with trades. I've had some that have been in conversation. Maybe I've gotten them to a point where it's like, I'm not going to respond to this guy anymore. And it's just like, okay, I got you. We're not, don't know if we're going anywhere here, but the offer's out there. So there's a lot of that going on, but I'd say the one thing that we should start off with here when we talk about trades is kind of how, and I think this is definitely going to impact the actual NFL draft from what we see this year, is specifically the amount of teams that are looking to move out. All right, here's the thing. Like, so we talk about like, hey, moving back, and there's a scenario which the Lions could be in a good spot. You have two teams at the top of the next round that absolutely could be in the market for a quarterback, and there's a real chance that it happens. Z dot, that's what we're talking about right now. Now, look, we haven't done anything official yet, and I'll tell you what, we're not going to do anything officially official from the trade side of things until the NFL draft actually begins. Once the draft starts, all right, and once we see who's on the board, that's when I can crank up my aggression, right? Right. That's where, if I have a deal already in place where I'm talking to multiple teams, because what I'm trying to do is get a lay of the land. I'm trying to get a sense of multiple spots in the draft, whether that's, say, the top 15, middle of the draft. Like, how high could I realistically get that's not insane? And then also just a few spots. Like, what if I just try to jump a few spots? What if I wanted to get in front of a specific team? And I'm actually going to show the draft order here and kind of talk through that. But the common theme, and I think this is going to also carry over to the NFL draft this year, a lot of teams moving want to move down. There's not as much interest in, hey, how can I get up in this year's draft? It's how can I get back in this year's draft? And I do think that ultimately that is caused by the amount of players that are in a similar bucket once you get beyond potentially pick 4, maybe 5. Like, there's so many players that could be considered in a similar bucket. I know there's been some San Fran rumors there. Maybe it's for a quarterback. I don't know if anything's actually going to happen, but especially where the Lions are at, like at the peak, it doesn't feel like there's any shot you're getting in the top 10. So kind of throw that out of the equation. Everybody wants to move out. Nobody actually really wants to move up. So because of that, it opens up the opportunity to jump up, but it makes it more difficult for the conversations that we've had of like, hey, just move down in the draft, just acquire some picks. And as good as a spot as it could be for that, for a lot of teams, it's just not going to be an option because everybody's kind of doing the same thing. Everybody's like, yo, I kind of want to get out too. So it's going to be difficult, I think, to make this happen, which in some ways, it actually works out really well for us because it's going to allow us the opportunity to potentially, if we wanted to jump up in the draft, move up for a little bit less than what maybe you would expect because there's just not going to be as many offers there. So we could actually be in a spot to move up in this year's draft. But it's kind of the big thing that stands out for me is trying to figure out exactly. Sorry, I had to text. Try to figure out what we can do with the trades. Now, I want to throw up some of these kind of the list of what we're looking at for the draft order. And I want to start with this. We can get to some players. If you got players you want to talk about, I can talk about them, that kind of thing. Throw guys in this because, again, this is a first round mock, but obviously, the first round is going to be where all the move, like this is the round, right? So I want to start here first because what we do have to look at, and I'm going to pull it up on the screen, is we have the list of the draft order. And to me, this is super important. But I think when we throw this on the screen, we can kind of talk through the realistic spots. And I don't want to necessarily give away with the I can give away the conversation. I'm going to give y'all some insight here, but I'm not even gonna lie. Like, I feel like teams are lurking. Like, I know they're not, right? Everybody's doing their show, but I feel like teams are lurking. Like, yo, what did he say? Who's he trying to go get? Because I've been in conversations with so many of these teams. But for me, so I actually start off with 11. I start off with San Francisco. I will give y'all a little sneak peek. I have had conversations with San Francisco, and to me, this feels like the peak, like the most aggressive move could be here. Like, remember, the lines went from 32 to 12, right? So maybe there's a path to the top 10 because there is so many jumbo players, maybe the back end of the top 10. But for the most part, for how far a team's got to go back, San Francisco kind of feels like the top end. Like, if you're trying to trade up, like, that might be the top end of what's realistically possible. And even then, you could be considering giving up future first, which is something I do want to avoid. I like having those, even if they're at the back end of the first round, just because of the value that they bring. So personally, I'm not really trying to touch that too much. But San Fran's kind of the peak for me right now. I've had conversations. I'm not gonna say we have something officially in place, but I think we could get there. And if it so happened tomorrow that the deal for me, I'm not completely all in with how much it's going to cost right now. The asking price for 11 right now is just too steep for me, right? I here's the thing. I'm okay with moving off future pieces. I know teams may value them this year, especially maybe even more so than you typically would. But there's also the element where I really want to have some draft picks this season. Okay. So I want to have draft capital. That's how the Lions build. So I'm still trying to be cautious with it. But at the same time, I'm not against being aggressive. Hey, you walk out with 4 players, but you like all 4 of them. You feel like they could actually make the team. Do it, right? Like we have 3 picks, back there at 200, right? We have one right before 200. We got 2 in the 220s or 1 in the 220s. Like, you have those 3 late picks. If you can move those into a next year, if you can move those up into this year, I have no issues with doing that, because at that point, especially the 200s picks, a lot of times you're keeping them from UDFAs. There's a legitimate shot that those guys don't even make the team year 1, right? So it's going to be difficult automatically there with where the roster's already at, that I'm okay with. Hey, we get limited players, we get less players, we're kind of in and out with this draft. I don't have an issue with being aggressive, but right now the asking price there is like, it's so many picks this season that I just haven't been able to be like, yeah, we're doing that. But I've had, my backer, my offer kind of pushed back, and we're kind of at a standstill, it feels like, right there. As for that, I'll throw the other team I've had conversations with, and this is one that, to me, first off, I got a relationship with the GM. You know what I mean? I've been in more conversations with the GM, so it helps. All right, this feels realistic as heck. That's Miami. Real quick, Corey has a chase, says, we can't pay everyone next few years. I say, let's make a package, move up for Carter top 3. And that's the thing. Like, honestly, if the Lions gave up every pick they have, I don't know that they could get top 3. Every pick this year, I don't know that would get you top 3. I actually would be pretty confident that it wouldn't get you top 3. Like, I don't think it would. So I think it would cost more than that. I don't think teams are going to want to let them slip. And I think that those 4 are kind of just cemented. So I think you would have to give up pretty much everything this year and future picks to make that go down, which is why I don't think that's going to happen. But I do agree with your idea, just as in general, that being aggressive is fine. You don't have to have 9 players. And it's not even as much about can't pay everyone for me, because the price is going to go up once you draft them higher. Like, Hutchinson's one of our highest cap numbers because of where he was drafted. He was a 2 pick, and he's one of our highest cap hits. So it's not like you're cheaper because you're a top 3. Like, you're cheaper because you're a draft pick, but you're still expensive. Okay, that thing is going to build up pretty quickly, especially as years go on. The salary cap continues to go up. But it's just more so about the volume. I don't need 9 players. If we do, that's fine, but I don't need 9. And especially guys that like 4 or 5 towards round 6 and 7. I don't need that, right? I'd rather take my swings in the middle rounds if I can kind of get into that zone, which again, it's difficult because ideally, right, if you could say, well, just move out, kind of fill up on round 2, round 3 picks, right? Load up in the meat of the draft. Who's trying to move up? That's the problem we're running into here. I don't know who's going to try to move up. I've had no conversations with teams legitimately trying to move up with me. I've had no interest for that whatsoever. And almost every single trade conversation has been teams saying, yo, how do we get out of this spot? So it's almost like, hey, maybe we take the reverse approach, similar to what we did last year. Now, that being said, Miami's interesting to me because when we look at Miami's needs, and PFF lists them here, which is great. They have tackle, guard. To me, Miami could potentially look at this as one, trying to get out, and following Miami, like, they are kind of rebuilding right now. And you look at their roster, they don't have a lot of they have a lot of guys that are on short-term deals. They feel like they're resetting, kind of going the new direction there, and that's going to take a second to kind of work itself out. So because of that, if there was an aggressive trade that feels even more realistic, I think Miami. I've been in strong conversations there. I'm optimistic that I might be able to get something lined up where it's not going to be, hey, I got the deal, we're in agreement, like I'm trading right now. but it would happen tomorrow when we're doing the creator mock. Like when we get to that spot, if the guy that I'm after is sitting there, that I could actually pull that trigger, and it wouldn't cost something that's so much that I feel like I can't do anything else in the draft. So that's the one I'm considering, because I think Miami will really value future picks with where they're at as a team. I think offensive linemen could absolutely still be in play at 28, or depending on what they got in return for me, they could also look to go from 28 to 25, jump up a few spots, just add a couple of extra pieces to that spot in the draft. So for me, I think Miami's super interesting when we get to the top. And also why Miami's super interesting, because depending on what you're looking for, if we're looking pass rusher specifically, I look at a team like Atlanta and I say, okay, now there's going to be, some speed bumps. We're probably not getting into the top 10. But honestly, once you get out of the top 10, if a guy there that is a pass rusher that you still really like, you're like, oh, let's go get him. Whether that be, I don't know, maybe it's Mike Green for you, right? Maybe you feel good about the Virginia stuff. It's Mike Green. He's still on the board once you get to 11. San Francisco goes offensive line or interior defense. I don't know. San Francisco could definitely go pass rusher, but they feel like they got a lot of areas that they could go. Dallas feels like they're going to go weapon there. So all of a sudden you get to Miami and it's like, well, hold up. If we get outside the top 10 and there's a guy that I really like on the edge, I'm like, this is a future piece. That's a spot where you'd be getting ahead of Atlanta, who definitely could go that direction. It feels like they always need to go that direction. You could potentially have Indianapolis going that direction where some of their contracts are at, trying to pair someone with Latu. It feels more likely tight end, but those two guys go top 10. That's just not going to be an option for us, right? You're getting ahead of Arizona, who could absolutely go anywhere on the defensive line, as well as offensive line, based on where the draft is at. It could be on the defensive line. So to me, the most aggressive spot that feels the most realistic is Miami. And I'm trying to line up a deal where I have it in place where it's not going to happen immediately. But if the draft plays out a certain direction, that I can say, okay, let's come to an agreement here. We'll be aggressive. We'll make that happen. But ultimately, I'm probably not going to pay. Let me keep this on the down low. That way TD's not listening. But I probably wouldn't pay like the value chart price. I'm just going to be honest. Like if we're going to make this move, I'm going to have bet value swing in my direction. And I think that's fair for this year's draft, because of where a lot of teams are going to have guys ranked, like I'm not going to overpay to get to 13. So it would have to lean my direction. They're looking for more picks. They feel like they can go a lot of different directions. And it's just kind of one of those things where future, it's like, all right, we'll take your future picks. So that's the team most aggressive that feels interesting here. Beyond that, right? Now it's about moving up a couple of spots. And I want to transition to that for a second, because now to me, I start to look at these divisional teams, and we're talking about getting up and we're being aggressive in this draft. I look at these teams right in front of us. Minnesota, Green Bay. Those are two teams that, we've traded with them before, but I look at both of them as they could take a guy that we really like. They absolutely could. I look at Green Bay first. A lot of people are throwing Michael Williams there. I'm a big Michael Williams guy. Now, I wouldn't give up the same price for Michael, so for me, like if you may not know, you probably do. I'm a huge Jalen Walker guy. So the price that I would pay for Jalen Walker, because I believe he's one of the best players in this class, is the most aggressive I would get to make a move. But this is kind of the area where it's like, okay, maybe it's a mid-round, maybe it's kind of pick. It's a future mid-round pick. Maybe it's some sort of pick swap that we could come across here, where now if I could go to Green Bay, pull an in-division trade, now all of a sudden I could jump in at Miami or Minnesota. In Minnesota, we know could be looking interior defensive line if you want to go that direction. I really look at defensive back here, because I think both of these teams are in the market for DB. And the Lions don't need a DB, but they could, if they love Malachi Starks, which I'm a big fan of, they could look there for that if the cost isn't crazy, just to ensure that they can get that done. They could look offensive line too, and I think that should be considered, because we know that we want another interior offensive lineman. Houston feels very confident. It's very confident to say you're probably going to have Houston take somebody on the offensive line. It's just who, we don't know. And maybe that's Tyler Booker if he falls there, right? So you could get your choice of offensive line, I think, if you got to one of those two spots. And then I look at cornerback, and the guy that pops to me is Ajay Barron. Now, I think Will Johnson will be gone. I also think Jade should be gone, but I don't know that he will be gone. The reason I don't know that he will is because he's going to be a slot at the next level, most likely. And I'm not saying that's not worth it. It's a position that matters in the NFL today, especially. But I also know that these guys have fallen. Historically, they can be great and they fall. I know he played wide last year. He doesn't have the measurables to live out wide from what we've seen historically. That doesn't mean he's not capable of it. But he's the type of player where, again, getting back to just best player available, if the deal wasn't overwhelming, and right now, I'll tell you, I've had talks with both of these teams, the better deal for sure has come across as Minnesota. All right. I've had more interest in Minnesota's trade proposal than Green Bay. And that makes some sense because they're ahead of the other. But the aggression that Green Bay's been looking for so far is much more than what Minnesota's been looking for. I actually think Minnesota could be a reasonable trade. And again, maybe that's getting in front of Houston. Maybe that's just hey, you don't take our guy, Minnesota. I mean, a lot of times I don't think you look at it like that, but this could truly be one of those examples of like, hey, let's not let Minnesota take our player specifically here. And then, of course, Baltimore always seems to walk away with a guy that they love who just falls in their lap and they need pass rush help. They could use a safety. Like, this is kind of that row for me where I feel like DB, absolutely. If there's a guy that you love and he's sitting there, maybe you get a little aggressive. So it's defensive back, and then it's also to me as well, a pass rusher still in play because Green Bay could absolutely use one. If it is a Michael Williams, I'd be willing to kind of throw a little bit because it wouldn't cost nearly as much. I'd be willing to throw a price potentially to make that happen. But again, I wouldn't be as aggressive as I would with a team like Miami. Now, that said, though, this is what's so interesting about it. And I'm going to give you guys kind of my insight of how I'm looking at this. Opinions may change. I want to hear yours. So get in the chat, man. Let me know. My aggressive move, like I said, would be Jalen Walker. All right. If I'm going to do something aggressively, that's the move that I would make. But I want to hear where people are at with these because this is going to be such an interesting exercise. And this is why I'm trying to get in conversation with most teams because I just want to know what's available, knowing that most teams want to move out because I don't know how this is going to go. And I think there's going to be a lot of realism to that this year where there's just like, okay, I kind of have a sense maybe what position they like. I don't know who they're actually going to take. Right. So that's where if you like a guy who stands out in a group, just go get him. Maybe don't sit back and just let it happen. That's the problem that is kind of I'm dealing with here when I'm looking through this. And for me, like I think about a guy, let's go offensive line. Let's think about Donovan Jackson. I think Donovan Jackson is worthy of being a back end first round pick. Simulators will tell you he can get out of the first round, right? Some will say, no, he's going first round. He's a guy that maybe has a little bit of variance to him. He's a guy that's really difficult to kind of gauge, but that also comes back to, hey, I'm probably not going to pay value price to make this move. But if I saw that he was there at 24 and Minnesota was like, yo, we want to make a move, we'll take honestly a little bit of anything. That might be a trade I'd be willing to do if you feel because like, yo, look, at the end of the day, all right, oh, you took him at 24, you could have got him at 28. Ultimately, does it matter? Like a lot of these things, if you have conviction, you take the player. Like, I mean, if it's going to be 4 picks and we're going to look back and be like, we missed him, but we saved the value there. And ultimately the guy's great. And it's like, that would have been a really good scheme fit for us long-term. It's like, yeah, you should have just made the little trade to make the move. And again, I think that's what just draft, as pointed out earlier, could be about. It's like, yo, get guys that could specifically is going to make the team. Guys that are comfortable to make the team, right? It makes more sense than taking a risk where your roster's at. You're like, yo, he's got a role. It's going to fit. It's going to work. Let's go forward. If we have to give up a little bit to just ensure that's going to happen, we'll do it. I think back to year 1, right? Remember how they said they were patient on Levi and Zarike? We're not that team anymore. Year 1, it was like, all right, we're going to be patient. Yo, we didn't have guys. So it was like, yo, we got a lot of spots open. Everybody we drafted had a role year 1. Outside of Jamar played a little bit, but everybody had a role year 1. Now it's like, bro, okay, now it makes sense to be aggressive. Now maybe don't be as patient. And if everybody wants back anyway, now is the time to get a little aggressive. So I do think that this is a super interesting spot to do that. He comes to mind. Booker also comes to mind. Curious to see where people feel about him when we get to this creator mock. I don't think I would maybe be as aggressive in the trade up here because I honestly just want to see where he goes. He's a guy that seems to have a lot of variance just because it's like, well, where does he fit? And he has to fit the right team, which could allow him to fall. And I think he could be sitting there at 28. So those are the 2 positions. Obviously gets all the conversation. If we sit back, we do nothing and we just don't get a trade. Because right now, I'm going to be honest, I'm not optimistic I'm going to get any offers to move out of my spot. Like I don't think it's going to happen. If it does happen, that conversation come up. I was anticipating getting on here and having that option on the table and something that we could talk about. It's not even an option as of now. Everybody wants to move out. So realistically, I don't think there's going to be a trade back. So because of that, my plan is either I'm going to get up for a guy that I really want, or it's just going to be, I'm anticipating I'm going to have to sit here and take somebody. And there's going to be a lot of options. I want to know in the chat, and y'all get in there and let me know. I want to know your hierarchy of what player you would go with or position that you would go with if you had to sit pat at 28. Like, give me some names, rank them together. I kind of want to get a sense where everybody else at. I kind of know where I'm at with a lot of these guys, but to me, this is such an interesting spot, picking towards the back end of the first round. We saw Lions take Jack Campbell a couple years ago, and that was kind of like, whoa, they went Jack Campbell here, and it was a linebacker, but that was at 18. Once you get to this range, man, like there's certain teams that feel like they're chasing a need, and there's also the Lions where I feel like, okay, wouldn't surprise me. I think it's very likely, right? For looking at team needs, and we've done this, it's going to be an edge or it's going to be an offensive lineman. Like those two feel the most likely. Bet on those two. Probably bet on edge if you want to bet on a position because it just has so many players that could be in that spot. But I also think that everything should be considered here, right? Because I think if you wanted to go linebacker and was a guy that stood out, you should consider it because it's not the deepest linebacker room. So if you want to take a guy here, I actually don't have an issue with it. I think cornerback is much less likely because of where we're at cornerback wise. Like it would take a Jahdae Barron actually just falling where it's like, okay, well, he's got a gap between everybody else. That's why I'm taking a swing and he fits amazingly. It'd be a little bit less realistic. Wide receivers, interesting. That's the one that I'm interested in. Now, the problem is, especially when we get to these simulators, is as we know, all of these guys are in the same spot all the time. So you kind of get to a point where you're like, all right, I expect the guy to be here. If he's not here, like you just expect the guy to be there, right? So you can make the move, you can adjust accordingly. When this goes down, that's not going to be the case. I'm assuming it won't be. I don't think there's going to be anything like what I've seen on the simulator. So because of that, wide receiver to me is on my mind. Not that it's a top need or something like that. I feel really good about a receiving core, but more so just about who could be sitting there, right? And because of all the conversations, right? For me, I think Matthew Golden will be gone. I think he'll be gone. I think Ted McMillan will be gone. My guess is in a creator mock, the weapons will be off the board, but I'm not sure on that. And I do think that if a Matthew Golden's sitting there, I would be willing to make that pick depending on what else it looks like. And that's where you get to kind of this edge rusher battle for me, right? I put out my edge rusher rankings. This is where you get to this player battle where you put two guys beside each other and say, okay, well, which one would you prefer over the other? And when I just go to my list, like Matthew Golden would rank above a lot of the guys at that position, right? It would be a smaller number because of the depth that's there. There's no depth at receiver. So a guy like that actually fell that position, I'd be open to taking it. I consider tight end. I don't think there's going to be a tight end that's sitting there that makes sense. I think Mason Taylor could go round one. I don't think he'll go round one in this mock. I don't think he has enough flash to do that. And I think as a route runner, like there's just little things. I don't think it's going to be able to get him to round one, but I think he could real life. I don't think it's enough for us to make that pick. I don't think it stands out enough for us to make that pick, but I had considered it. Truly, just kind of outlining everything's on the table. Interior defensive lineman. That's going to be another spot to watch because we have Harmon, we have Kenneth Grant. Those two are expected to go kind of in the first round, I would say, sort of. Walter Nolan as well. I think he'll be well gone, but I'm not sure. I don't even think he's really a fit for us, but we'll see. I probably won't be my pick anyway. Jahad Campbell. I like Jahad Campbell. Now, he's one that my anticipation, my guess is today, Jahad Campbell will not be there at 28. Like I'm fairly confident he won't be there at 28. But he's one that even though ranking wise, I don't have Jahad Campbell super high for me personally, yeah, I think it's Jahad Campbell. That's everyone's name. I don't know why I thought differently there. But I don't have him like incredibly high ranking wise. I do think that this could be a worthy spot back in first round, second round. That's kind of where I'm at with him. That said, though, I think he fits the Lions really well. He's a guy that I consider, and I'm going to lay this out, okay, before as we keep this thing moving. I want to lay out a scenario, and I want you all to get into the chat. I'm going to lay out a conversation that I've had just to give you an idea of what's being asked for. Now, I'm trying to negotiate these things down, of course, and trying to make this the best offer possible. But let's say this is cement. This is all the team is willing to do to make this move. I'm going to give you a team. I'm not going to tell you exact. Okay, I'll tell you. So let's give you one. I want to give you Green Bay. Okay, so Green Bay's at 24. This would get us in front of Minnesota. It would get it. And this is a little bit more of an aggressive ask. I'm definitely haven't said oh yeah to this, but it would get us at 24 or 23. It would get us out of Minnesota, Houston, LA, who could take a linebacker as well. Baltimore could be on that because look, Baltimore just likes good players. They want the pick swap, so the 5 picks, and then in return, they want me to give them pick 102 and 196, and they'd give me 237 back. Okay, that's the conversation right now. That's the inside the war room. Now, hearing that, I want y'all to get in the chat. Let me know what you think about that offer, right? Because then that's where you get to, you're thinking to yourself, okay, now it's got to be the right player. And this is why I'm not doing a trade before the draft starts. The player has to line up for that to make sense. So if I told you, let's use Jahad Campbell. If Jahad Campbell was sitting there at 24 or 23, is 23, and that's what it cost for the Lions is, hey, it costs that. It cost you 28, 102, 196, and in return, you're going to go up 5 spots, and you're going to get 237. So now you're going to have 3 picks in the 200s. You're not going to have 196 anymore. You're not going to have 102, so you're going to have 130 and 60. That's your grouping. So you're going to have about 70 picks between your second pick and the next pick, and then you're going to have a massive gap. You're essentially going from 130 to 200s. Okay, so that's where you're at. The problem with that specifically, from a numbers perspective, is now you lose a lot of flexibility, right? There's not a lot of movement I can make with that move if that was the case. Outside of I'd have to give off future assets. And that's not ideal, but that's probably where I'd have to be. If you wanted to jump for someone, you're probably going to do that. If you go to the second round, maybe you take Campbell, but guess what? Now I kind of want an offensive lineman. All right, guy we want, he's going 45, or he's going a few spots. We want to ensure we can get him. You're probably dipping into those future picks to make sure that you can get that piece. Again, I'm not mad at being aggressive here, but the values of 200 picks are not that high. There's not a lot of value there within the first 100 picks to give someone 200s picks and give someone a 228. That doesn't move the needle much within the first 100 rounds. That does essentially nothing on the trade value chart. That's worth like a point. And it does basically nothing in theory. So it's a lot to give up. Now, it just depends on how you feel about it. He played edge, right? He was a 5-star edge, I believe, coming out of high school. And obviously they were loaded at edge. I didn't think that he popped as much as a pass rusher even this past season when he had those opportunities specifically, but also as a linebacker, I think that's his best spot. Like, I know that he's capable of that. I think he's best as an off-ball. I'd let him run around in coverage. I think he can be outstanding in coverage, and I would want to be great there. I think he'd be really good as a fit schematically, and he does have the versatility, which clearly by all these visits, the Lions value that specifically. So I think he fits the Lions. I'm not as high on him individually, but he fits the Lions. So that's just a kind of example of what it's actually going to take to make this happen. Now, that's one of the more aggressive trades. I want to give you guys another trade. And I don't know that Campbell would actually be there at that spot, to be honest with you. And then you get to that conversation where it's like, well, is it even worth doing that? Or is it worth just kind of waiting out and seeing what happens? Like, if he's sitting it with Green Bay, do we think Green Bay is going to take him? Right? If I throw this back up, is Green Bay going to take a linebacker? Potentially, but I wouldn't expect it, but potentially, right? Depending on what they're board, their cornerbacks could be gone for sure. They may not have a D lineman that connects. That'd probably be most likely, but they could, I guess, right? I mean, they have a linebacker that they love right now, but there's some young guys that they could be moving on from. You get to Minnesota. Could they take a linebacker? I don't think Minnesota's going to take a linebacker either. They could go safety at the spot. It feels like that might fall in their lap. Houston probably won't go linebacker. They could use another linebacker. I don't think they'll go there. LA definitely could go backer, but do they feel the values there at that spot? Would they feel like it's Derek Campbell with the injury could miss some of the early portions, at least in terms of the offseason? Do they want someone that's like, all right, we know he's ready because of where we're at as a team? You get to Baltimore. Will Baltimore take him? Again, I don't really think it's a need, but it's Baltimore taking good players, and that would make sense. So at that point, if he's sitting there 23, do I even feel like I need to be that aggressive? So a guy that I think of is Mykel Williams. And I think of it really for a team like Green Bay, because I think Green Bay, if he was sitting there, would take him. That's kind of the sense that I get. And what I've heard from Green Bay in all of this conversation is that Green Bay right now is not at all interested in moving up. Now, that may be wrong. They may move up a couple spots. I don't know who they're targeting, at least in this creator mock. But they haven't shown much interest in jumping. So for me, they feel like they're a patient team. They're willing to move out. They don't maybe have a guy that they love that they're going after, which makes it interesting because then I feel like I don't know where they're going to go. Like, I don't feel like I have a sense of where they're going to go. And they must feel comfortable that that position group that they like is going to kind of fall to them. And there's going to be enough volume there for them to make the pick make sense, which makes me think they're going with the defensive front player. That would be my guess, is that they're going to go defensive front at that spot. Let me give you one more just to give you all guys I want to hear your thoughts on this. We go to Vikings, all right? And I'm throwing this all out there. So, okay, don't send this to the other people, okay? These are conversations in-house. So we've had a couple back and forth, but the Vikings specifically for this would only want 102. They would want 102, and it would get me up to Minnesota spot. Now, again, when I look at who I'm actually jumping in front of there, which would be Houston, LA, Baltimore, I'm jumping in front of the team that could absolutely be for a lineman. This is one of those spots where it's like, okay, well, if you wanted to go make sure you get that guard that you really like, you want to make sure you get a Donovan, you're like, hey, don't, or maybe that's a Booker. This would be a spot to do it, because you could, if he's on the board there, you'll probably jump to the spot and ensure that you're going to get that piece, knowing that the other teams absolutely could, specifically Houston. Like, that's a great reason to move above them. And also, you're getting it from a team like LA, who could be all, I mean, heck, they could play a quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do, but I feel like they're going to go win now kind of move, whatever that may look like. That could be a veteran linebacker potentially as well at that spot. They could absolutely just go offensive line, which again could help you. This feels like a really good spot to go offensive line. You think about Baltimore needing offensive line. If you went with Minnesota, I think it'd be a great spot. If you said, hey, we want to go get an offensive lineman, there's a guy that we're after, and say it, let's just use Donovan Jackson as the example. If it took pick 102, and now you're looking at, okay, you got pick 130 and 60. You hold your back end picks. You're not going to have anything future, but that's where you're at, right? You have 60, then you have a massive gap to 130. You got about 70 picks. Now, can you move back around two? Potentially. But it is now that you've taken that offensive lineman, say you want an edge next, right? That's what everybody's looking at. Is that edge there? Do I have to move up again to get somebody? Or will I be able to sit back and wait? Or will I be able to trade back out of that spot to get that capital, some of that capital back? That way, I can kind of fill out what I need, but then also at the same time, I can still get an edge. Is that possible for us? Is that edge then a long-term piece? Is he like he's like the opposite of Hutch long-term, or is that's a situational rusher? At this point in the draft, you're probably getting a situational rusher. That's probably what you're landing there. So for me, that's the trade that I think if there's going to be a small trade that happens, that would be the trade that goes down. And I think that the only way I do it is the most likely way that would happen is for an offensive lineman. And that would really also depend on what the rest of the board looks like. Because depending on how the rest of it falls, offensive lineman could be our best choice. Campbell could be gone. All the edge rushers that we like could absolutely be gone in this draft. I could see them flying off tomorrow. And that could get you to a point where it's like, hey, best bet is O-line. Maybe that's Kelvin Banks. Maybe that's Donovan, whoever that is. Hey, that's the best bet. Make sure let's not miss out on them. Because if I can't move back, if I'm stuck here and I got to pick anyway because no one wants to throw me, see, it's different. If I'm in PFF and I can move back, I can just keep moving back. But if I can't move back, and I have to sit here and take somebody, and I realize all the edges that I wanted were gone, I'm not as comfortable with taking a Carson Schlesinger or Demetrius Knight in the first round. And, you go to safety, and you're like, okay, one of the two's gone that we liked. Are we sure? Do we want to take Eamon Wari here? Then all of a sudden you get that conversation. Wide receivers are gone, the top two, and you're like, do we just go make sure we get the lineman because we miss him here? Then what? Then do we feel like we're even getting value? So to me, it's super interesting. Tomorrow, Creator Mock Draft, 4 p.m. Eastern time. This is for the Creator Mock Draft. 4 p.m. Eastern time is the Creator Mock tomorrow, 4 to 7. It's the first round, so tune into that. I got to go, though. I appreciate y'all joining, man. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you then. Thank you all for watching. Tune in tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time over here on Bleacher Report for the full Creator first round mock draft, and I'm out. All right, Chad, over here on YouTube, we're out as well. We're going over right now to Roundtable Sports, man. So go over there. We're going to do a mock draft. Let's go to Roundtable Sports. Search it up on YouTube. I'm going there right now. I'm out. Appreciate y'all joining.